White background with a red wavy visual element surrounded by occasional yellow drops at the top. Text in bold in the middle. Our voices. At the bottom center of the image are logos of Rising Flame, C20 and G20 in large sizes.
So we are here actually in a way being a part of a historic journey within this unique Indian leadership. I would really like to begin by thanking the Indian G20 and the Civil 20 leadership for recognizing the need to create this separate disability working group. It is historical in its nature. It is important in its nature.
Disability rights are important. Disability inclusion is a must.
Achieving equity and justice for people with disabilities starts with acknowledging and understanding their unique challenges and experiences. It requires us to break down the barriers that limit their participation in all aspects of their lives.
Even in our society, if there are so many of persons with disabilities, we don't see them in our schools, we don't see them in our restaurants, in the cinema halls, in daily life.
The world can move on to say access to technology. The world can move on to say education is a right. The world can move on to say we are contributing to the economy, and you will still have a segregated space where you're having people who you don't see as full human beings. So I think the biggest challenge is that shift, that social shift, that mindset shift, and then that shift getting translated into policy, law, infrastructure, action, and budgetary commitment.
Sociopolitical, economic, and cultural barriers.
That diagnosis of deafness is often very late. Early diagnosis is often considered to be about the age of 2, but this is far too late.
Not everyone agrees in this very simple statement that all children belong in school. So we have to start at the beginning with some of these very basic assumptions.
When you look at the data, or when you are a part of the inclusive education setting, everybody focus on the primary education or secondary education. What about secondary, higher education, higher secondary education?
We have not developed any manpower for adults with disabilities. There are no personal attendants. There are no job coaches. There are no independent travel trainers. There are no people helping you to plan your life.
Hospitals, police station,
accessibility should be provided in police stations and hospitals so that the communication gap can be bridged. If these changes aren't made to ensure accessibility, survival becomes harder for deaf people.
Pure person kontamandi unnaru. So
there are a few trans and queer persons with disabilities, around 139, that I spoke to, who said that the biggest problem they face is with regards to trans healthcare.
Legal capacity is a very important concept of the Disability Convention. It's not really being applied by the CRPD committee in relation to sexual and reproductive health and rights.
She had polio, and because she had polio and was disabled, her parents did not educate her. When she turned 18, they sold her to a man so that she could produce a male progeny.
People with disabilities have had to forge their own solutions because the system simply does not provide enough help. But if they have devised those solutions, then isn't it important for the media to represent that learning as wisdom?
Yes, we have the solutions.
Por mais de 12 anos, apoiamos as pessoas com deficiência intelectual.
For over 12 years, we've been supporting persons with intellectual disabilities to become self-advocates. We support them to learn about their rights, to multiply their knowledge, and to become leaders.
Some of the recommendations that we are making to the government, for example, is to invest in building community social support interventions that are led by the community.
We need international cooperation to solve these limited resources in our country to provide accessibility and also the provision of assistive devices and technology.
Mainstreaming disability issues as an integrated part of relevant strategies of all, development agenda.
At the World Bank, for us, ensuring the accessibility of digital services and systems is really important when we think about persons with disabilities as beneficiaries and to ensure that they can benefit from our investments in the digital economy, in digital education, and in digital delivery of public services.
So the first one is about having programs that skill people with disabilities for platform jobs, improve digital accessibility and inclusion for people with disabilities. And this goes for public and private sector alike. Many of these jobs require you to use smartphones, access technology. We know technology is not equally available to everyone. Not all technology is accessible. I think there's emphasis that needs to be placed to make these solutions more accessible.
Includability is, and what I mean by that is it could be with every company having a chief includability officer. It could be just like how in POSH, you have to name the people and you have to put that on a notice board. You know who are the people who are part of those committees.
Any reasonable accommodation policy, any affirmative hiring work must come alongside a grievance policy. Okay? And this, whether it's reasonable accommodations, whether it's a grievance policy, it must include the voices of those who are affected.
What we've realized is that D&I and diversity, equity, and inclusion has to be a part of the DNA of the company. It has to be from top down in every aspect of the company. It needs to be seen.
The cost of exclusion of persons with disabilities could be as high as 7% of our GDP. Therefore, it is important to visibilize and include all persons with disabilities in our societies and economies.
The budgets allocated for creation of new institutions, renovation of old institutions must be diverted to supporting community-based activities, family empowerment, psychosocial support, disability-linked supports, neighborhood support groups, caregiver support groups, life skills development, recreational drop-in healing centers, and so on.
G20 governments should ensure that people with disabilities, particularly with those with lived experience of extreme weather events, can meaningfully participate in all climate change discussions.
One mantra which I have sort of imbibed is nothing about us without us. Now, if in any official meeting I see there is no person with disability, I defer the meeting. I say that all the stakeholders have to be there.
Financial investment, resources, it's all about making sure that it is not just talk, but we are putting our money behind that. We're putting our human and financial resources behind that because the best plans in the world will not achieve change in people's lives if we don't invest. And that requires budgets, and that requires planning, and ministries of finance getting behind this as much as the rest.
In this journey of disability, equity, justice, C20 India, over 2,500 persons with and without disabilities from across 35 countries joined in with a single goal: to build an inclusive, resilient, and sustainable future for all.
Voices in order of appearance: Nidhi Goyal, Founder and Executive Director, Rising Flame. National Coordinator, C20 Working Group, Disability, Equity, Justice. C20 Steering Committee Member. Ambassador Vijay Nambiar, Sherpa, C20 India. Shri Rajesh Agarwal, Secretary, Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities. Joanna Clark, Director, Deaf Child Worldwide. Catherine Holland, Executive Director, Perkins International Programs. Dr. Sandhya Lamay, Professor, Tata Institute of Social Sciences. Poonam Natarajan, Founder, Vidya Sagar, Former Chairperson, National Trust for Welfare of Persons with Autism, Cerebral Palsy, Mental Retardation and Multiple Disabilities. Priti Soni, Founder, Deafcon Foundation. Kiran Nayak, President, Karnataka Vikalachotanara Samist, KVS. Esther Kismoti, Chief Executive, Sexual and Reproductive Health Matters. Nita Panchal, State Coordinator, Gender Disability Resource Center. Paramita Vohra, Founder, Agents of Ishq. Roni Vitorino Pires de Nove, Advocacy Assistant, Instituto Joe Clementi. Lizzie Kiyama, Founder and Managing Trustee, Disability Trust, Kenya. Risnawati Utami, Founder, Ohana Indonesia, International Coordinator, C20 Working Group, Disability, Equity, Justice. Saulak Thongkue, Member of the Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Deepti Samant Raja, Social Development Specialist, World Bank. Apoorv Kulkarni, Head of Research, Center for Inclusive Mobility, OMI Foundation. Shanti Raghavan, Founder and Chief Enabler, Enable India. Raj Mariwala, Director, Mariwala Health Initiative. Keshav Suri, Executive Director, Lalit Suri Hospitality Group. Founder, Keshav Suri Foundation. Dr. Bhargavi Davar, Executive Director, Transforming Communities for Inclusion. Shantha Rao Bariga, Founding Director, Disability Rights Division, Human Rights Watch. Shambi Sharp, United Nations Resident Coordinator in India. White background with a red wavy visual element surrounded by occasional yellow drops on the sides. Text at the top. C20 India text in bold in the middle. Disability, equity, justice at the bottom center of the image are logos of Rising Flame, C20 and G20 in large sizes.